Do you have your flashlight? It's night, and let's see what's crawling around the garden. It's always so fun to go outside with the flashlight and see what's happening throughout your garden. So I'm going to just take you around to a few places in my gardens and see what we can find. Because a lot of times at night, things are out that you don't see during the day. Slugs being one of those, or snails. And so it's really easy to find them and dispose of them at nighttime versus during the daytime. Now, just the other day, Joe saw a great big garter snake in this area, and I thought maybe I might be able to see them. And I just finished watering, and so it's a perfect time, because a lot of times the creatures will have gotten wet, and with the flashlight, they'll really be reflecting. And so I'm looking at each of my pots, seeing if there's anything that I should be concerned about. And the water, you can hear trickling down into the barrels because it's still running off the roof because the water just stopped. But we're going to walk around, see what we can see. My bleeding heart is just finishing the very last of its flowers. It was so beautiful this year. And it's nice to see the reflection on the leaves, especially when they're wet, because you can really see if there's any damage or disease or fungus that you may not be able to see during the day. And so I'm just going to go up this little porch thing that we have here, where we have some cucumbers and some pumpkins growing in some big pots. I just want to make sure that I don't find anything. But at nighttime, especially with the light, there's a lot of flying little insects that will be around your plants. And I can tell right there, my rhubarb needs picked again. But everything looks fine in these pots. The license plates are just to protect. Let's go over into another part of the garden. And this is my main part where I have the raised beds. And more rhubarb, of course. So we're just going to go down. I checked my strawberries today, and there are just tons of strawberries down there. You can see it's just a carpet of strawberries. None of them are ripe yet, but it won't take too long. The nice thing about the carpet, though it's hard to walk through, is that the birds don't get in to eat all those strawberries too. So we're just going to go down, and I have this on my pathway. It's just like a plastic mat. Some more volunteer strawberries, but they all look fine. No slug damage, and I think it's because we have so many garter snakes in our gardens that at nighttime they just have a feast. Some moths. The light will really attract things, and so we're just going to look in some of the raised beds. Now, these raised beds are fairly new planted. All of the things in there less than 2 weeks. And you can see everything is really taking off. And in fact, these 2 tomatoes in the back have just grown wonderfully. Cabbage is good. The only thing in this bed is one of the artichokes really basically died off. It has 1 leaf left on it, where the other one is totally fine. Zucchinis, everything in this bed is fine except for that 1 artichoke, and I don't really have an answer unless the plant was just weak, and when I planted it, it was warm and it just didn't work. And this bed has basically mostly tomatoes in it, and a little bit of celery in the corner. Now, slugs will like to come in and eat those, but I don't see any damage whatsoever with those. No flea beetle damage. So this is a good walk through. Now I have some plants, some trees in pots, some aspen and some apple trees that I need to pot up. They're just sitting underneath an apple. This rhubarb I have dug up and dug up and dug up and gave to people, and it keeps coming back. So I guess it's just going to live in the corner of that raised bed. A lot of daylilies. Pretty soon they'll send up their flowers. And this mat has worked so well. No weeds in my path. And the irises have really started to bloom. Now, along this path, sometimes at night you'll find little beetles, salamanders, creatures. Let's see if we can make him move. He's not happy that somebody's watching him, but that's okay. So we're just going to go back down the path, and we're going to come around looking at the apple trees. You can really see some, if there's moths, if there's worms, a lot of times that reflection you can see at night that you don't really see during the daytime. And so that's just helpful. Sometimes on the big rhubarb leaves, I'll find snakes sleeping. And in the morning, when the sun's just coming up, you see that too. So let's go down this part of the garden. We'll follow that hose and back behind these rhubarb leaves. And see, these are big ones that the snakes will lay and sleep on at night. I've planted some tomatoes, and this bunch of irises are actually about 4 feet tall, and they haven't really opened yet, but they don't get quite the amount of sun that some of the other ones do. And irises was one of my favorite flowers in these parts of the garden. There's a lot of apple trees by them, but all of the tomatoes seem to be fine. I haven't had any pests, no flea beetles or anything like that, and so that's worked out nicely. And I planted a couple artichokes a couple days ago. I put some sawdust around them just to hold the moisture because I had some. And I added 6 more tomato plants, all heirlooms, and they were varieties that I had not tried before. And so I'm going to really watch them, and I am going to put the tomato bags over top of them tomorrow, so it will protect them if there's any hail whatsoever in our thunderstorms. There's some spaghetti squash behind there, and of course I have daisies that pop up wherever they want to, but I like them day or night. They're beautiful. Now I have some berry bushes. These are some cherries that are ripening up. More irises as we go back around right by this beehive. Bees, of course, are sleeping right now, but they're all okay. The garlic is doing well. I really don't have any pests with my garlic or my onions, so I am very glad with that. Some new beds that have some sunflowers in them and some berries, and we'll go up past the compost bins. This bin we have to chop up, so I'm just letting these ones dry before we do that. The chives are about done, so I'm going to cut those down about half of the plant, and it will start to regrow, and then I'll cut the other plant, half of the plant, when that first cutting has really rejuvenated it. And these are raspberries that are fall bearing. We have some wild roses back here. A lot of times I can find my spiders back here, but I'm not seeing any tonight. My new asparagus bed is doing well, and I had some extra onions, so I planted them right by there. And the onions, we just don't really have pests that bother them. And we're just going to walk around to the other side of the yard. Now these are my clementises, and they're just making the buds. And they make great big huge purple flowers, and it's one of my favorite areas in the garden. Now over here where my gooseberries are, I have had a lot of little grasshoppers, and this happened last year too, and they really defoliate. They eat the leaves. They don't do anything to the gooseberries, but the leaves that should look like this all up and down the stem are just being munched. What happened last year was they ate the leaves, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. They migrated, and the plant was still fine, and I'm assuming that this year will be exactly the same. They're going to eat a whole bunch of the leaves, and then the gooseberries are going to be the largest gooseberries than I've ever had. It's just really interesting. Now the bog that we changed, it used to be a pond, we made it into a bog, and the plants are really started to take off. I've been hoping to see some frogs or salamanders in here at night, but I haven't yet. My raspberries are just about to bloom, so I did hang up a wasp nest or a wasp trap right by here because the wasp will eat your raspberries, and I don't like that. And right around the corner, against this great big cottonwood, I planted a climbing rose. This is a blaze rose, very large red flowers. So by next year, it should have climbed up the trunk and I will have roses. Here's one of my newer kiwis. It's a male and it's just veining up. And this is my original kiwi and it goes way up onto the deck. And I chopped it about halfway, half of it off last year because it was just out of control. It was going everywhere onto the deck. But at night I can really see where there's some damage on the leaves, and I really think it's just sunburn. Now I'm going to take you over to my water iris. Now this is the plant that I took part of it and put into the bog, and I didn't expect it to bloom at all in the bog. So this is one that's under an apple tree that I just keep really damp. And so next year it should make it so that I can have those purple flowers in the bog. And we're going to go around through some other raspberries over to where I have some pumpkins. This is a sumac, and when these flowers open up, they literally have hundreds of bees everywhere. But it's a very tropical looking tree, and so I like it in the garden. It's something different. Now over here is some other pumpkins that I planted, probably 2 weeks ago. And they're coming up nicely. And we have a visitor. And it's just a garter snake. And it's just sleeping, I guess. It doesn't seem to care that I'm having a flashlight on it. But they are so good if you have bugs and slugs and snails, mice. They will eat them all. Well, that was a tour in the garden. And I hope you go outside, grab your flashlight tonight and go through your garden. You'll be amazed at all the things that you see. Have a great night.